Thank you for joining us in our continuing Shir Advanced Bereshit for Beginners. This week we try to get a deeper understanding of Kayin, his sin, and his punishment. So we're going to start with two quotes. The first is from John Steinbeck. He wrote a book called East of Eden. If you're not familiar... Yes. Yes. Okay, good. I'm glad we know who Steinbeck is. East of Eden is about Cain and Hevel, so that's why I thought it would be apropos. The quote goes as follows: "Don't you see, the American Standard Translation orders men to triumph over sin, and you call sin ignorance. The King James translation makes a promise in 'thou shalt,' meaning the men will surely triumph over sin. But the Hebrew word, the word timshol, 'thou mayest,' that gives a choice. It might be the most important word in the world. That says the way is open. That throws it right back on a man. For if thou mayest, it is also true that thou mayest not." That is John Steinbeck, East of Eden. And we're going to juxtapose that to a quote from someone else you're probably familiar with, Lewis Carroll. She wrote Through the Looking Glass, along with some other books you might be familiar with. And she says as follows: "When I use a word," Humpty Dumpty said in a rather scornful tone, "it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is," said Alice, "whether you can make words mean so many different things." "The question is," said Humpty Dumpty, "which is to be the master. That is all." Okay. With that in mind, noodling around, to bring us back from where we were last week, we had the stirrings of maybe a little bit of sympathy for Kayin, because we kind of understood why his face fell, and this whole idea that, like, he's the Kohen, and maybe it's his job to bring the korban, and Hevel is sort of usurping things, and he's bringing a Bechor, and there's maybe a little bit more that meets the eye when it comes to Kayin's frustration with what the results are for what he did, right? He innovated. He brings a korban first. Nothing happens, or God does not pay attention to him or his korban, and God pays attention to Hevel and Hevel's korban, and that brings us up to pasuk Zion, the hardest pasuk, I don't know, ever in the universe, probably not, but definitely the hardest pasuk in Bereshit, just to read and translate. So who would like to take a crack at reading and translating Genesis 4:7? So just to remind us, so in the last pasuk we had, and maybe this is actually important to point out. I don't know if we did pasuk vav last time. In pasuk Hey, we learned that Ve'al Kain ve'al minchaso lo sha'ah, that to Kain and his offering God did not turn. Vayichar la Kain ma'od, and Kain was very distressed. Vayiplu panav, and his face fell. And in pasuk Vav, we have God confronting Kain. Vayomer Adonai el Kain, lama chara lach. Why are you distressed? V'lama naflu panecha, and why did your face fall? The only thing I would point out here before we pick up on pasuk Zion is that, to my knowledge, I think this is the first time that God expresses knowledge of what people are feeling internally. Right? It's one thing to know that someone did an action. We have to remember, even if we have a pretty good sense of what the idea of omnipotence means, it doesn't necessarily mean that people in the ancient world understood it the same way. The other creation stories that are out there, you, the human, can do something and the gods don't know about it, right? Because you have a certain internal feeling or thought or whatever. They don't know what's going on. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu very clearly knows exactly what's going on, not just in reality, but in Kain's internal workings. Okay. Who's going to kick us off with Pasuk Zion now that I've beefed it up so much? Okay, Charles.
Hello. Im tetiv se'et, v'im lo tetiv, lapetach chatat rovetz, ve'elecha shukato, v'atatim shalbo. If you not do well... Well, is it not if you'll do well? Let me... I don't know that say word.
Like no say, to be uplifted.
Oh. Hello, im tetiv se'et. you'll be lifted up, being lo tetiv. Okay, but if you don't do well, la petach chatat rovates, at the sin crouches at the door.
Okay.
Ve'elecha. Okay, I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah, no, that's what it means.
Ve'elecha, and to you teshukato, and to you it will cleave. I don't know. It's gonna attach. I don't know how to translate that word.
What's teshuka?
I don't know.
Desire.
Oh, and it desires you, and tatim shalbo, and you should rule over it.
Okay. What does any of that mean in practical terms? In your own words. What did God just tell Cain?
It's like you're
Roll with the punches.
Roll. Okay.
Right, what are you getting so upset for? Like,
Well-
come on, move.
Okay.
you don't let your emotions get the rest of you.
Don't let your so Cain, I see you're down. Your face fell, and don't be so sad. Right. That's what you're getting from this pasuk. What are you so fetchy about?
Right, you screwed up. If you do good, it's going to be great. If you don't do good, it's going to be a bad situation, implying to him that you didn't do good.
So is God gaslighting Cain here?
Maybe. I don't. Well, gaslighting, I don't know. He's saying.
He's asking him in the pasuk before. He's like, "So why are you so sad? Right? What's the matter? All you have to do is do better."
Right.
I don't know if I did that. The term I think people would use is gaslighting, but is he?
What happens right after?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So is this meant seriously? Is he telling him? Maybe it's like what you were saying, Charles. You did something wrong. You need to do better. Because if you don't do better,
this is feedback. Right. You're on a slippery slope right now, and you need to hey, whatever you did, as genius as the Korban was, something was wrong with it. There's a reason that I didn't make it a magical thing and everything's hunky dory.
what does he mean by saying sin crouches at the door? The door of what? What is sin an animal? Like we're anthropomorphizing sin. Just if it was me, if you do better, you'll be uplifted. If you don't do better, you're going to fall to sin. I don't know. Something bad will happen. You will be punished.
Right. Or you're going to be left out.
Yeah, or you'll be left out. And then more than that, not only is sin crouching at the door, and to you, it has desire. Its urge. Here, the English I have is its urge is towards you. The sin feels very much like a human being, right?
This is
or an animal or something. It wants you. It's waiting at the door.
Right. You're special, and you're attracting quote unquote unwanted attention
From sin.
Yeah.
Like sin's in the back alley.
Right.
Where's Cain? Oh,
right.
As soon as he and what if he does nothing? He seems to have two choices. Im tetiv, you'll be uplifted. Im lo tetiv, not. What if I am not either one?
Right.
What if I just?
Isn't that the point of it? To be more even keel. Don't get too high. Don't get too low.
No, he's saying you have to do better. If you do better, you'll be uplifted. You Cain right now, your face fell. So now we have to restore your face. We have to lift you up. I assume. The end of the pasuk sounds like something we've heard before, and no one else says it, but I'm going to say it because
man and woman, right? The curse.
The curse. What's the pasuk?
It's a couple of pasukim earlier. It's
the end of
when God says in childbirth you're gonna.
In chapter 3, verse 16. Who wants to read 3:16? Yeah, go for it.
Elisha Amar Harbel Harbeh Itzvonech Aronech Be'etzav El Di Bana Ve'Lishet Kosech
To your husband is you're gonna be your.
So part of the curse to woman was, and to your husband will be your desire, and he will rule over you. And what does Cain get? Ve'elecha teshukato. This sin seems to be in the place of
the woman.
The woman. V'atatim sholbo, and you will rule over the sin, or whatever. Now, what does that mean? How does that have anything to do with what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
do better and you'll be uplifted. Don't do better and there's this sin that maybe has something to do with woman
Is there
that's
a lady
waiting to
named
pounce on.
Katat, and this is like his wife,
Right.
and like, hey, she's
Do better or else you're going to have to marry Khatat.
Yeah, she's at the door, man, and she's
Right.
crouching there, and she's after you.
Well, whatever it means, did Cain get the message?
The message was kill your brother.
Right, unless that's the message that he seems to take. Well, let's read the next pasuk before I sort of
kill your brother. This is right before he kills Hevel.
Mm-hmm.
So the Malbim actually thinks that's exactly what Cain heard. Cain misunderstood the message, and he thought that the sin that is being talked about, v'hu yimshalbach, is Hevel, and that his job was to rule over Hevel, and if Hevel doesn't get with the program, then he's out. So Cain tried to rule over Hevel. It didn't work out. So sorry for you, Hevel, but I have directive from God, v'hu yimshalbach, and I'm gonna stick to that. The only thing I will say about that is then that makes God into a very poor communicator if Cain misunderstood, and then why, if you're Cain, why would you not say that? Like when God comes to confront you after having killed Hevel, why aren't you like, hey, you told me Yatatim Sholbo. That's what I tried to do, and he was not having any of it. But okay, let's.
That was the Malbim?
That was the Malbim, yeah. Okay, before we get too carried away, let's read pasuk. I guess one other thing. I think you guys all have Onkelos over there.
Yeah.
Usually Onkelos translates very close to the wording of the pasuk, but I think you can see just from the number of words, even without reading through it, that he goes.
Should we do it?
Yeah, go for it.
Hala im tetiv ovadah ish tebek
Right.
lach. Ve'im la tetiv ovadah liyom dina chatat netir v'diatid le'itpara minach im la tetuv ve'im tetuv yishtevek lach. That is hard Aramaic.
So the gist is, first of all, you see that Onkelos understands that what God is talking about in terms of Tetiv is his korban. If your avoda is better, then things will be better for you, and if not, then Onkelos sticks in there that there's going to be a day of judgment, and you're going to be called to task for all of the bad stuff that you've allowed to cling to you, because instead of getting busy doing good, you were busy doing the opposite. But just interesting to point out how far afield Onkelos goes is sort of unusual for him. Okay. Pasuk 8, now that we spent so much time on Pasuk Zayin.
Vayomer Kayin el Hevel achiv. It says to Cain, Cain says to his brother Hevel, Vahi biyotam basadeh, and they were in the field. Vayakam Kayin el Hevel achiv vayahargehu. And they're talking in the field, and all of a sudden, Cain rises up to Hevel, his brother, and he kills him.
Okay. So one thing to point out here, and they do a nice translation here. They actually put in an ellipsis. There's missing information here. Vayomer Cain el Hevel achiv. Cain says to Hevel, what? Right? So.
We don't know.
So what I'm sure is percolating in most people's minds are all the midrashim that we get. What were they? They were fighting about who owned the. Okay, so we'll go in order. Who in whose portion should the Beis Hamikdash be built? Or they were fighting over who owns the land versus the movables, and if Cain owns the land and Hevel owns the movables, so Cain says get off my land and Hevel says strip, and they. Fine. The third one is that they're fighting over a woman. It's either Chava or it's the extra twin sister, because by Cain by Hevel there's an extra et to read in that there's multiple sisters. All of that is sort of backwards speculating, meaning Chazal don't know what they were fighting over. They're offering you essentially templates. What do people fight over that leads to murder? It's either religion or it's women or it's money, right? So they're giving you various versions. the Targum Onkelos, as well as the Septuagint and the Samaritan Bible, actually fill the words in. They tell you what Kayin said to Havel.
Okay, dialogue.
Yeah, they just throw in, and what would you expect them to throw in? If you were throwing in some words here, what would you add to make the sentence make sense? As soon as you hear it, you'll be like, oh, that makes sense.
Let's go talk.
Right, exactly. Neilech lasadeh. Where does he have it? That's Uncle's.
He pulls a phrase.
Yeah. Vayomer Kayin el hevel achiv neilech lasadeh. Let's go to the field. And it was when they're in the field that they have this whole disagreement. But that is not in our text, nor is any of the ideas that Chazal are bringing, and I think that's all intentional. Meaning, if there had been any phrase in there, then that everyone would have hooked onto, oh, that's the reason that Cain killed Hevel. In other words, if Cain had said to Hevel any of the things that we talked about, then, oh, you see, it's, people fighting about this leads to murder. People fighting about that leads to murder. The pasuk intentionally not including that information is there to tell you there is no one thing that you can pin as the source for why people fight. Whatever Cain said is irrelevant. The second that he opens his mouth with an intent to kill Hevel, it doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter the substance of the conversation.
Well, not saying anything makes you think it's what happened earlier. It's either jealousy or shame, jealousy and shame.
Right.
That's
yeah. No, I think I think that makes a lot of sense. Do we hear right rather than what the midrashim were filling in? Do we hear any allusions to? So there are other people that the Torah describes as being killed out in the field.
Egla Rufa?
The Nara Murasa. The girl the Torah talks about a girl who's either who's raped out in the field, so you can't hear her scream, so it's considered like murder, right? In other words, there's a reason that we're getting this setting. Vayibi otamasadeh. It could have just said Vayomer Kain al Hevel achi Vayakam Kain al Hevel and he killed him. Why do you have to tell me?
It's not like Rosh Hashanah was so busy.
Right.
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 Right, like, I mean, is this going to be
Why are
another
we getting
case
the
where
setting?
Adam and Chava were like ending like right next to them the whole time?
So that's another interesting point. No one's here. God. It's this is something Professor Latak points out, that God seems to always show up right after the bad thing happens, right? Like God shows up, tells Hevel, like Kayin, you can do better, and then God disappears. And then bad things happen, and God has to show up again. Like, oh, man, if I just missed it.
Like Nanny from the Muppet Babies.
Right. Well, okay. This, I guess, is also worth pointing out. Kayin is the first person who was not created by God directly, right? Adam and Chava are Yitzir Kapav. They're made by God, so it makes sense that they have some sort of interaction with God. Kayin, until a few psukim ago, there's no indication he ever heard God speak, right? God comes down and talks to him. That's an amazing experience. To go from hearing the word of God to immediately not just disobeying God, who told you to go do better, but to go from hearing the word of God to murder is a big leap, right? However mad you are that God didn't accept your korban, you can brood and stew about it all day long. But to go from that, like, I don't care how mad you are, so then don't offer God korbanos, right? Go lead a hedonistic life and go be an atheist. I don't know what you're going to do. But you just heard God speak to you directly. And okay, you want to ignore him, man has free choice. But to go from that sublime experience to I'm going to kill my brother, something God said to him stirred him up. That's the only information the text is giving us.
And not for nothing, the pasuk mentions multiple times that it's his brother. It says it twice.
So we actually, I think the term is used 7 times in the parak intentionally. We talked about the seven
and sevenfold.
Yeah, sevenfold reoccurrings. The seven's going to be all throughout this parak. But yes,
Right.
it stresses over and over again. And when God's now going to call him to
Right.
task,
Right.
he's going to say, "Where's your brother?"
This
Oh,
isn't-
my brother.
Right. This isn't just some random jerk who
Yeah.
showed him up. This is your brother.
Right.
This is a dude who's essentially same genetic material, just like you, same parents, same upbringing.
Right, for sure.
You know, like it says it twice in this pasuk.
Right.
It's trying to throw something at us there.
Okay,
That's what
let's. I love it. I hear you. Let's go on to the next pasuk.
Okay. Vayomer Adonai el Kayin, Ei hevel achicha, Vayomer lo yadati, Hashomer achi anochi. Keep going.
Well, let's translate.
Okay. Sorry. And God says to Cain, "Hey, where is Hevel, your brother?" And he says, and presumably Cain says, "I do not know. Am I my brother's guardian or keeper?"
Right.
As they so put in the...
So both of those terms, lo yadati and hashomer, are loaded words. Anytime you see a word that's used in Bereshit, especially in Parshas Bereshit, we have to look back at, okay, how was that word used previously, and what is the new context coming to tell me?
Knowledge is in the sense
Right.
of sexual congress.
To be yada something is to have some sort of deep and intimate connection.
Right.
Right? He's not just saying, I don't know. He's saying, I don't have that connection with my brother. I'm not connected with him in a way that is meaningful to me. And then remember, Adam's job was to be la'avda u'lashamra, right? And Cain was an oved adama. So Cain is saying, I have no connection to the concept of shmira at all. I'm the oved adama. You want someone to be a shomer? That's Havel's job or your job, God. I don't know who's going to be a shomer, but it's not me.
Or he could just say, maybe I'm here to guard the...
Or I'm here to guard the land and not the guy.
I'm not here to guard the brother.
Right.
I'm here to guard
You
the
never
land.
told us anything about guarding people.
Yeah.
Right?
You're changing the terms and conditions.
Right.
Of the
So
Apple
but the
Store.
one thing you see is that Cain does not think that this was okay. He doesn't say, well, you never told... Like, I've heard this answer a lot. Well, Cain didn't know that murder was wrong, and we're going to see in a minute that God says Demei achicha tzoakim alai, that the bloods of your brother are calling out to me. What are the bloods? So one Medrash talks about how Cain didn't know where to knock the neshama out from, so he bashed him in a bunch of places. So there's blood splattered on the rocks and on the blah blah blah. That's what multiple blood is talking about. So it seems premeditated, like he knows that he did something wrong, and he's now trying to cover for it. He doesn't just immediately say, well, I killed him. He's over there dead. I'm super sorry. Was I not supposed to do that?
Right.
Like, he's trying to
Again,
deflect.
diversion of the blame. Another recurrence. Like, hey, did you eat the thing? The lady you gave me did it. The serpent did it.
Right. Well, here he has no one to blame.
Yeah.
He's just like...
Isn't like the pasuk, I'm saying that when you talk about the faith crouching at the door, like that isn't he like warning him, like, don't lose yourself, don't,
It sounds like he's telling him there's
two.
two directions. You can do good or really bad
You
stuff.
can't say that you can't say that he didn't know. Wait, you can't say that. Well, I guess he's saying you didn't know that killing was.
If he wanted to say that he didn't know killing was wrong, then he should have said it. Should have been the first thing out of his mouth. What do you mean? I'm in the clear. You never said anything about killing. I didn't eat from the tree. I'm good, right?
Right. No, he knows that what he did wasn't.
Right. He knows it's lo tov. Okay.
And the thing is, he's also the nature of his response is like there's sarcasm there.
Yeah.
Right. The thing is, it's not just.
You want to talk about gaslighting?
Right. This is like, you could say, I killed him. I was mad at him. But he's like, what am I? Chopped liver? What am I? His babysitter? Like,
right.
what?
Just answer the question.
Right.
Where is Cain? Lo yadati.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where he is.
Yeah, you know exactly where he is.
Right. But even if you just answer the question, adding Hashomer Achi Anochi is like, what do you need that for?
Right.
Yeah, he's clearly given it to. What's that?
He's already blabbering. I'm saying he's already.
Once he started
This
answering,
is
he's like,
the
I
villainous
don't know.
crackdown.
What am I supposed to do? Okay, let's keep going and see how God responds.
Get the lawyers here quickly.
Yes, right.
Vayomer, me asita, kol demei achicha soakim elai min ha'adama. And God says to him, "What have you done? The sound of the blood of your brother cries out to me from the earth."
Right. So God this is a rhetorical question, right? God knows what he did. He's just telling him, you think that you can just kill him and bury him in the ground and I'm not going to know. No, I hear the voice of the blood, and the way Chazal explained is damo v'dam zaro.
Right.
That I hear him and all the generations. That's why we learn that anyone who kills a single person, it's as if he destroyed a whole world. Because when Cain killed Hevel, so he wiped out all of Hevel's. That's very sci-fi if you think about it. That means that there's alternate realities. There's the reality that we're in, and then there's the alternative that could have been where Hevel lives and has children, and then we sort of collapse the wave function, and that disappears. And now God is holding that against this Kayin, right? Kayin can say, "What do you mean, his kids? He didn't have any kids. So when you're mad at me at kids that he never had, like you can't. That doesn't work."
Right.
No, that's enough of a reality that we're gonna write in the pasuk demei achicha plural. Your blood and your brother's blood and all of his children are calling out to me min ha'adama. Remember, you Cain were talking about. Well, I'm not the shomer of achiv. I'm the shomer of the ground. What'd you do to the ground?
Right.
You polluted it, right? You're supposed to be the Oved Adama, and would you put into the ground? Your brother.
Right. Incidentally, a little chiastic structure stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
Cain responds with sarcasm, and God's immediate response is also a little sarcastic. What have you done?
Right.
God knows what he's done.
Right.
Like, you're gonna tell me,
Right.
oh, am I my brother's keeper? What have you done?
Right. They're both
Like-
answering with rhetorical
Right.
questions.
It's like a classical Jewish response. What have you done? And then he says, like, you know, he said before, "Where's your brother?" Like, his blood is calling out to me. I know where he is.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
right.
Like, don't answer me. Oh, I don't know. I know
Right.
exactly where he
Right.
is.
It's like-
We both know where he is.
Yeah. It's like, but I'm just saying, it's like sort of bookended.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I hear that. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay. V'ata, and now, okay. V'ata arur ata min ha'adama asher patzta et piha lakachet et demei achicha miyadecha. And now you are cursed from the land which patzta, to spread out,
Opened.
to open its mouth, to take the blood of your brother from your hand.
So, how did we get to the ground? Like, this whole pasuk is not about Cain. Your curse from the ground, I get, is like okay, you're the Oved Adama, and the worst thing I can do to an Oved Adama is to curse him from the Adama. So now even if you work the ground, it's not going to do anything for you. Well, that's the next pasuk. So I don't know, what does that mean? Arurata min ha'adama, you're cursed from the ground. And then all of a sudden we're implicating the ground as if it had characteristics. The ground, which opened its mouth to take the blood, the ground didn't do anything. It's ground.
Right.
What is going on?
He polluted the ground.
But yes, he
He's
polluted.
being cursed from the ground.
Right. The ground, but not just the ground.
Yeah, but
the ground that opened its mouth and
Right.
took the
It
blood of
suggests
your
that the
brother.
ground had some sort of agency here. The ground did something wrong.
I had to.
Like-
I had to explain a little bit of why the ground is cursing him.
Well, the flip
Oh, you're
side.
wait. Say that again. God's not cursing you. The ground is cursing you.
It says, what's the first? It says, "V'yata orata min adama," you're being cursed from the ground. Ground is cursing you because you polluted the ground. How did you pollute the ground? Because again, it's sort of being poetic about it, but instead of just saying, "Oh, because he put his body in the ground opened up and swallowed all this blood," and you got.
That's
got
an interesting
disgusted,
take.
and got,
That is
you know,
interesting. How does Alter translate Arura Tam Minha Adama in 11? Because they translated here, therefore you shall be more cursed than the ground. Not cursed from the ground, but Arura Tam Minha Adama, meaning like more than the ground.
Right.
And I like yours better.
Right, but the ground. I mean,
One second, what does Alter have?
And so cursed shall you be by the soil,
by the soil like shimmy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I think-
Because really, what are the soil's alternatives? It's gonna be like, dude, don't put that stuff over here. You're on your own. You dispose of the blood some other way.
Right.
Like, I'm getting rid of that.
Okay. Okay, let's keep going. We have some more time? Yeah, a few more minutes.
Ki tavod et ha'adama, lo tosef tet kochalach, na v'nad tia va'aretz. Okay? Because you will work the land, and it will not multiply to give its strength to you.
Lo tosef tate kochal lach. It will no longer give its strength to you.
Okay, no longer give its strength to you. Okay, navanad tia ba'aretz. You're gonna be a wanderer and a vagabond. You will be on the land.
Was that? Is he a vagabond? Is that where we got vagabond from?
Yeah, like what is
Or
a
is that-
fugitive and a vagabond? Is
No,
that
no,
like
it's some alliteration because he likes to keep nav and nad has alliteration. So I'm sure whatever he does, in English, it has some alliteration there.
A restless wanderer.
Restless wanderer. Come on, Alter. Okay.
Rolling Stone.
Yeah, you saw my mention for the shear. That's
Yeah.
weird. Ki tavo. Okay, so you are a farmer, and now you can no longer be a farmer because the ground is not going to produce anything for you. So you get an even worse curse than Adam. And part 2 of your curse, I guess, is that you have nowhere to live. You have to, like a farmer is connected to that specific soil, you have no connection to soil at all anymore. You're just all over the place.
right? You're not a shomer at all anymore.
Right.
You want to be
You're
like
fired.
you want to give me a sarcastic shomer response? Let's
Right.
say,
We need
Hmm?
huh?
Now we need Shmira.
Now he needs Shmira. I like that. Let's hold on to that for next week, probably. Okay. The next pasuk is going to.
Big one.
Next pasuk is a very big one. We're gonna have to figure out how to read it. Let's do the Hebrew and English, and then we'll present the alternatives.
Vayomer Kayin el Adonai gadol avoni miniso, and Kayin says to God, "My sin is too great to carry, or too great to bear."
Okay. So you're reading it as a statement. My sin is too great to bear.
Right.
Can you read it as a question?
Right. Is my sin too great to bear? Like, am I past the point of no return?
Right. The difference between those two readings is accusative versus confessionary. So if he's saying as a question, is my sin too great to bear? Meaning, let's back up. He's the first person to admit that he sinned. Adam doesn't admit that he sinned. Chava doesn't admit that she sinned. He's the first person that said, okay, you got me. I sinned. I did something wrong. Now, either what you're punishing me with is too much for me to be, I can't take, like, that's too much, or I sinned. Is
Right.
is there not something you could do about that?
Or
Like,
it's charata. It's
the
saying
same
this sin is too great for me to bear. I mean, like, I can't believe I screwed up this bad.
right.
Right. So as opposed to what were you were just saying?
It could be a question.
Right.
Is it too much for you, God, to bear this? Like, you
Right.
have to really punish me this harshly.
Right.
So, which way do you read it, and what are the implications?
And just traditionally, I've always heard it as a question, translated as a question.
So, what does it mean if it's a question?
Yeah, so that's talking, it's like, he's holding out hope. that-
Right. Well, first
That
of
way
all,
it
the
isn't
pasuk
that bad.
begins that Cain says back to God. He's at least having a dialogue with God.
Okay.
You know.
A little bargaining.
He's saying like, he's like,
What can happen? What can you do? What could happen?
yeah, he's trying to.
Right. He handles more after this.
Yeah, he's not saying this. Otherwise, it's too. He's saying it's over.
Right. There's definitely some sort of teshuva going on here, at least just from the very fact that he mentions that he sinned. Right. That's the first component in the Rambam's like halachic definition of teshuva is vidui. Like, say that you did something wrong, and he does that. And we have the midrashim about the Kayin teaching Adam HaRishon that there's this concept of teshuvah. Okay. The second part. What is so bad about what? Like, okay, I get it that you used to be a farmer, and what was the alternative? Like, what's the punishment for murder? You get put to death, right? Count your blessings.
Right.
Get out of there with your skin. You know what I mean? Instead of like, at least acknowledge, like, I understand, I did bad. Thank you for not killing me. He skips all of that and just goes straight to, like, really? Is that what? Like, come on.
But he's totally dead man walking. He has a life sentence.
A life sentence to what? Live.
To wander.
To wander, okay.
Right, and maybe he's not thinking this through. You know, if God said, "Guess what? You killed your brother. Now you're going to work this piece of land forever. That your brother's blood is just splattered there forever, and every day you have to go by this place to remind you of this horrible thing that you did."
Right.
Like that's like an alternative punishment. Like, guess what? You kill somebody, you have to deal with the consequences, and you never get to forget about it, and you never get to run from it. And, like, maybe this is hey, count your blessings. Like, I'm telling you to go away from there so you can forget.
Right.
I'm telling you so that you can move on psychologically.
That's
okay, and you
got to get away
rebuild.
from here.
Right.
Who else kills and has to go away from
The unintentional killer.
Right.
Right.
The Gol Hadam and the person who kills by accident.
You're Miklat, right? You gotta go.
Right.
You gotta run away, and you're gonna be in a place that's not really familiar to you for a long time.
Now, I don't.
He's an intentional killer. Yeah.
Right. I don't think he's unintentional. Even if you say he didn't know like how to kill somebody,
kind of
but he doesn't.
He would be death.
Right. I mean, it's interesting. He doesn't get the death penalty. What's that?
I guess Beis and Shamal would put him to death.
Right, but they're not.
That's right. He's not. He already knows his punishment when he's, when his when he confesses here.
Right.
He knows he's not dying.
Okay, I think we'll leave the last few psukim for next week. Yashar Koach.
Thank you.